Harriet started playing the piano at the age of 3. At the age of 5, she won a full scholarship from the Elsie Leonard Cross Memorial Foundation to the Guildhall School of Music. At the age of 8, she was invited to play at the Blackheath International Piano Festival. She has given solo recitals ever since and all over the world. She has also collaborated and performed with other leading musicians. She is a voting member of the New York chapter of the Recording Academy and an artist for the T.J. Martell Foundation. During during the first lockdown earlier this year, Harriet was performing every day from her balcony in London to support her community. In a moment, I will hand over to Harriet, who has brought with her Josh, who will assist. Harriet will tell you all about her putting Blake to music. She told me that she has a deep love for Blake, and it is that love which inspired her debut album, Heaven and Hell, The Doors of Perception. In a moment, Harriet will announce the program. She will talk to you and guide you through the event. There's going to be 3 pieces. Then we will take a comfort break and reconvene for questions. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Please mute yourself, switch off your camera. We want to only see Harriet and Josh. Right-click on a participant who has their video turned off and select from the drop-down menu, Hide Non-Video Participants. You will see only tonight's performance. Thank you for coming. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to get to play for you. I've admired and enjoyed so much the Blake Society for years. And it's really my love of Blake that enabled me to find the voice for my debut album, which was, I didn't want to just do a classical release of classical repertoire. I wanted to do something that I had a really personal relationship with, but also that was different to other things that had been released at the time, and that made the point about the relevance of classical music. And I feel that Blake is a great example of someone that was of his time, but is as relevant today. And his concept of the Doors Perception was taken up by Aldous Huxley and then by the band The Doors in the 60s. And I felt that he was a really relevant example for the relationship between the arts and the importance of having both literature, classical music, rock and roll, and an inspired way of life. And I think that classical music has the tendency, like many art forms, to be categorized as something that is of the past, but the human experience is current and is yesterday and is today and is tomorrow. And I really wanted the album to represent that. So the idea of Heaven and Hell, The Doors of Perception, was that it would be produced by Russ Teitelman, who's a multi-Grammy Award winning producer, but his background had been in rock and pop. He did the Bee Gees, George Harrison, the Monkees, Ricky Lee Jones, Eric Clapton, and has a broad love and understanding of both music and film, actually. But we had wanted to do a project together that made sense of both of our backgrounds. And so we felt that I wanted it to be very much about a Blakeian journey because of my love of Blake, from innocence to experience to higher innocence. And it's so exciting to be able to talk to a group of people that are interested in that. And so that was the idea of the album, that the album would actually physically take you on that journey, and to build musical relationships along the way. And Russ brought to the table his understanding of classical music from the point of view.
Harriet.
Yes.
There is a problem with the sound. People seem to be able to see me, which they shouldn't, and not you, and they don't. Yeah, so I'm going to make myself invisible again.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. Okay.
And there's lots of people in the chat saying they cannot hear you very well.
Okay. Let me just going to adjust.
I can't see Harriet, sorry. I can hear Harriet. The sound is very little, but I can't see her.
Anyone else see me?
I can see you.
Great. Okay. And how is the sound?
I can see her now. I can see you.
Great.
Great.
And the sound, is that improved?
Someone says it's better now, soft.
Okay.
Too soft.
Okay, hold on. I'm just adjusting the microphone, just hold on. Sorry. Is that better?
No.
Okay. That's okay.
Oh, the video situation seems to be improving.
Great. Tech is not my forte. Yeah, so the idea of the album was that it would include Russ's experience and vision of classical. It would include somebody who had a long-term relationship with all three things, and that made sense to Marianne Faithfull, who did wonderful reading of various plates from Marriage of Heaven and Hell that I curated to form the narrative of the album and to take the listener on that journey. So we don't have Marianne today.
So sorry.
But so we're going to open with the John Adams, which is a piece called Phrygian Gates. John Adams is a contemporary composer, wonderful contemporary composer, and he very kindly said that on the album we could use a segment that fit the plates that I wanted to include on it. So it's a segment of the full piece, which is 45 minutes. So don't worry, it's not 45 minutes, it's just 7. And Josh Johnson is going to be reading Marianne's part very kindly. And then I'm going to go into the Bach Busoni Chaconne. The Bach is based on violin partita. And Busoni, 200 years later, turned it into a very organ sounding arrangement, taking a Baroque theme and placing it in a romantic sphere and using the full force of the modern instrument of the time. Of course, I'd love to do the whole album, but there isn't time. So the idea of the Bach Busoni, and the reason that it was really the centerpiece of the album was the relationship where it starts from D minor, it goes to D major in the middle, and it goes to minor at the end. It feels quite religious in places, and it really, for me, encompasses that marriage of countries that's so central to the concept of the album. And then I'm going to be finishing with the Chopin Second Scherzo, which is a very different piece of music, also in the Romantic period. But I think encompasses more of the higher innocence aspect, and is also a beautiful piece of music and quite an uplifting one for such a strange time in our world. So I'm going to start with Phrygian Gates. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that the sound is now much better, and I will be answering questions afterwards. We will have a bit of a shift between the first and the second piece while we readjust the microphones for solo piano as opposed to 2 artists. Thanks.
Rintra roars and shakes his fires in the burdened air. Hungry clouds swag on the deep. Without contraries, there is no progression. Attraction and repulsion, reason and energy, love and hate are necessary to human existence. From these contraries spring what the religious call good and evil. Good is the passive that obeys reason. Evil is the active, springing from energy. Good is heaven. Evil is hell. As I was walking among the fires of hell, delighted with the enjoyments of genius, to which angels look like torment and insanity, I collected some of their proverbs. The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. The roaring of lions, the howling of wolves, the raging of the stormy sea, and the destructiveness of the sword are portions of eternity too great for the eye of man. Everything is possible. To be believed is an image of truth. The tigers of wrath are wiser than the horses of instruction. You never know what is enough unless you know what is more than enough. Exuberance is beauty. Sooner murder an infant in its cradle than nurse unacted desires. Thus men forgot all deities reside in the human breast. For the cherub with his flaming sword is hereby commanded to leave his guard at the tree of life. And when he does, the whole creation will be consumed and appear infinite and holy, whereas it now appears finite and corrupt. This will come to pass by an improvement in sensual enjoyment. But first, the notion that man has a body distinct from his soul is to be expunged. This I shall do by printing in the infernal method of corrosives, which in hell are salutary and medicinal, melting apparent surfaces away and deploying the infinite, which was hid. For man has closed himself out till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is. Infinite. sorry. So sorry.
us taking a break now. Thank you so much for listening.
Let's all come back and put our hands together. Wow. Wow, that was wonderful.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure to play.
Yeah, let's take a short comfort break, and then Harriet, you can leave now, of course, but Harriet staying to answer your questions. Just about 5 minutes, get a drink. Hi, Joe. We're just having a break.
How's the sound from this position?
I can hear you loud and clear. I don't know how it is for everyone else. Yeah, people are nodding. So everyone can come back. You can show yourselves so you can see and talk to Harriet. Wow. Well, yeah, so if anyone's got any questions or comments, I mean, there's lots in the chat. I'm not sure if you can see it, Harriet. Just feel free to speak and ask.
Say thank you. It was magnificent. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Who am I talking to? I can't see who it is.
My name's Debbie.
Hi, Debbie. Oh, hello, I can see you.
Thank you very much. It was really, I was totally amazed by it. It was lovely to listen to. I turned the lights out and everything, so I had full atmosphere. So thank you.
Amazing. I'm so glad.
It was really beautiful. Thank you, Harriet. Very first time for me to hear you, but really, really, really good.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Great performance. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Harriet. That was really fantastic. It was amazing. Thank you.
Very, very welcome. Are you all members of the Blake Society? Is that how you came to know about the event, or did you come across it another way?
I'm a very new member of the Blake Society, so that's how I heard about the event. Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, it's one way to spend the last night before lockdown, I think.
Exactly.
I've got a question. How did you find Blake? How did you discover Blake? Do you remember?
Yeah, I first came across him as a teenager doing A-level English and thought he was amazing. And then kind of re-engaged with him in my master's degree. We had this incredible humanities elective called, and it's called Genius and Madness. And it was literally the best thing I've ever done. And it was everything from Virginia Woolf to Jim Morrison to William Blake it was just phenomenal. And I got to kind of do the very first one of it. There's a man called John Pagano, who's like lifelong lovers Blake, and he's teaches at Columbia, but he also came to teach humanities at Manhattan School of Music, where I was doing my master's. And I found my master's degree at Manhattan I found that to be actually the most valuable part of the whole degree, other than moving me to New York, where I've lived for the last 10 years. And Blake really saw me through and gave me purpose and vision as to what I was going to do afterwards, that became kind of authentically and uniquely my own, and gave me the ability to speak to a larger audience. And the more I engaged with it and the more that I utilized my relationship with him, the clearer my path became as a musician. And so it's been a long love affair.
Thank you.
I was wondering, Harriet, if you could give us any recommendations or point us in the direction of any other musical interpretations of Blake or versions of Blake that you think are wonderful or best avoided.
I don't know any that are best avoided. You know, someone that does know a lot about that is actually Jason Whitaker. He spends a lot of time looking into and that's how he kind of found me, and it's how I kind of re-engaged the society actually. So I think he might be here tonight, I'm not sure, but he's definitely involved with the Blake Society, but he was much better informed to answer that question than I am, I think.
We did a quiz a couple of events ago, and which I hosted, and one of the rounds for that was a music round. And I must confess, I got most of the answers from Jason's website.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
But the one that we all found a little bit horrifying was some Allen Ginsberg interpretations, which are quite
really
sort of audibly terrifying.
And anyone in particularly?
I think the one I used was the is it the Laughing Song from the Songs, which is pretty it's a sort of, he does it with gusto, but I'm not sure the results are quite what he thought he was getting.
Right, it's less esoteric and yeah, okay.
It's an unintentional comedy, yeah.
Brilliant. And what's your relationship to Blake?
I'm studying precisely the relation between Blake and music, the reception in Portugal. I'm from Portugal. And when I heard John Riordan's question about one of the horrifying adaptations, I was thinking that quite recently I got to know, I heard a German group that I didn't know of, but I knew that they started in the 90s. They are called QNTAL. QNTAL. It's a CD from 6 years ago. It's their
Okay.
7th CD. Yes, I don't know if any of you have heard their adaptation of The Tiger, and well, it was not that horrifying, but it was quite something like Enigma's doing a version of William Blake, and I know that Enigma has some awkward relation with Blake, but not in terms of musical adaptation. But it was quite strange because it was in a way electronic, but in a way mixed with dance music. I think that they were, although the group is not that recent, as I said, I think that they were still trying to find a way or something. Maybe that's for me, the worst musical adaptation that I've heard. Yes, for my musical tastes and for the things and there are many. Well, and I like Allen Ginsberg's adaptations, but I understand your point. Yes, but well, we have something. We have so many things to hear, and in Portugal there are some adaptations, and there is one very recent from this year from a group that also has a story of 25 years, but they are quite related to the literary fields. They have a Portuguese author, a female author, writing lyrics for them, and she didn't quite translate The Tiger. She adapted The Tiger in her own very special way, and knowing that she was doing that for a musical group. Yes, they are called Três Tristes Tigres, Three Sad Tigers in English.
Okay. And that was enjoyable?
Yes, very enjoyable, yes.
Great.
And for me, it was a very special experience, because when we were with Sibyl last year at Tate Gallery, I received, before hearing the song, which only happened this year, I received the adaptation, the text, the Portuguese text, and I was, well, in the middle of Tate Gallery, seeing the Blake exhibition and receiving the text that I knew that was going to be adapted for music, and it was a very special moment in many ways.
Wow, that's amazing. Really cool.
And I still have to hear your music, Harriet. I'm sorry, because I feel my I'm in in a lower position in a way, because I still haven't heard your CD. I'm sorry. I've ordered it, so in a question of some days I will hear it and I will definitely say something to you.
Oh, wonderful! Thank you.
Thank you. I was really, really curious, and I was worried today because I thought that I missed the time for being here. So thank you very much.
Oh, very welcome. Glad you enjoyed it.
Excuse me. Peter Dodd speaking. Good evening to you, Harriet, and thank you for
Hello.
your renditions this evening.
You're-
I have, there's a phrase that William Blake used, which you'll be familiar with, where he spoke of the music of the spheres, which is for me one of those wonderful graphic, almost archetypal phrases that turn up with great regularity, joyous regularity in his work. And of course, he didn't write poems of innocence and experience. He wrote songs of innocence and experience.
Yes.
And, I know that, of course. I mean, this is me trying to educate myself, which is a really difficult job, believe me. And but I've always had the idea, I have no musical abilities whatsoever, as a horde of people with hearing aids and earplugs were attest, including my wife. And but something which I remember impressed me years ago, I think it was on the wireless in England, that there was a scenario, I think it was taken from Ackroyd, of the life of William Blake, or rather the death of William Blake, where William was singing on his deathbed in Fountain Court. And just the idea of singing your way out of this life and singing your way into the next gave me a great vision. And I just, well, frankly, when talent was handed out, I got I didn't even get the end of a short straw. I got no straw at all. And despite my own efforts to work with music, I have to happily rely on other people's efforts, which is not only more musical than mine own, but it has that taste of, if I could only do that. But it's like a carrot in front of my donkey. I'm moving towards it. I hear the music. I look at you and dislike you intensely. How can she do that? I've had piano lessons. I've had several of them. I can't do that. But so thank you for giving us of yourself this evening.
Oh, you're so welcome. It was an absolute pleasure. And I hope that your piano lessons continue to go well. It's such a lovely thing to do during a time like this, I think, to have a relationship with something that isn't Netflix.
So if you were to take one of Blake's particular simpler poems, The Echo in Green, for example, one of his simpler poems, could you extemporize on your piano now?
No. I mean, I could, but you wouldn't want to hear it.
Oh, well, I tell you, I would certainly cheer you on. Forget about all these Philistines. But I'm just wondering how it would sound, because this is a confession, so you mustn't tell anybody. But occasionally, when I'm in the bath, I endeavour to hum a Blake poem to music in inverted commas of my own creation, and I just wonder. I've never had the opportunity to ask a musician to extemporize on a simple piece of poetry or complex piece of simple poetry before. One day, perhaps somebody will be brave enough to pick up the gauntlet. What do you think?
Yes, I think it takes a bit of thought and preparation for me, anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm just one musician. I'm sure there are some that would feel well placed to do that.
Oh, I'll find a victim one day, don't worry.
Harriet, thank you very much for this evening's performance. Can I ask you a question? In your album, you invited Marianne Faithfull to speak.
Yes.
How did you discover Marianne Faithfull's interest in Blake? Was it serendipity, or was it through research, or how did you discover it?
Well, I've always been a fan of Marianne Faithfull's anyway, as a musician. But when we were thinking about who was going to be the reader, when Russ Titleman, the producer, and I were about it, we had originally thought of Patti Smith, and I contacted Patti, and she had agreed, and then was unable to when it came to the time of recording. And so we sort of thought about the next person that made sense. And Russ had relationships in Marianne's circle, and so reached out to her. But she came to mind because we both sort of knew that she had a strong love of Blake, and she also sits in that rock and roll history, but in that sort of literary one. And she really made sense for the album, I think. So we were very excited to have her. And she actually sent 4 versions. She recorded them in Paris, and they all had their own quirks. And there was one in which she swore on it, and it was quite funny, but we weren't allowed to use it. It was my personal favorite, but apparently we couldn't. But there were just quirks and improvisations in the moment around the text that she'd been given, in each one that was so special. And choosing one was a real joy.
Thank you.
I love Patti Smith as well as Marianne Faithfull, but I think that's, as fate would have it, I think that's a much better fit. I listened to your record the other day, and I think Marianne Faithfull's voice is just the voice of a life lived and experience, and all the cigarettes she smoked and all the things that she's done. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It sort of feels like a force from the earth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we were thrilled.
Could I ask another thing? Other than obviously on the piece, the excerpts from Marriage of Heaven and Hell that we're talking about, that's direct use of Blake's language.
Yeah.
But obviously the rest of the album is instrumentals. Are there sort of specific correlations for you between the pieces that you chose to play and certain Blake poems or indeed artworks? Or is it more to do with creating a sort of Blakean narrative or movement?
There's relationships between life and death and heaven and hell in the key relationships. So the D minor is traditionally the key of death since sort of medieval times, and E major is traditionally the key of heaven, and D minor and E major are geographically next to each other, but harmonically as far away as can be. So they represented the marriage of contraries in that regard. And so that's one of the ways in which the relationship was sort of pulled together. And the choice of repertoire represented my idea of what it would be like going through the Doors' perception through a large span and period of time of repertoire, but also each one for me had the ability to have a relationship to a specific idea of Blake's rather than a specific poem. But that was how it kind of came to pass. And when we were ordering the sequence for the album, I had really strong feelings about how I wanted to do it, and Russ had lots of ideas about how he wanted to do it too. But in the end, it was just so important for me because I actually thought maybe I wanted Marianne at the end, but then it felt as though it was better to create a mindset at the beginning. But I don't think I'm done with Blake and music at all. Like I think that it's an introduction into kind of what's next. For me, it makes sense
Well, I'm now tempted to ask, what is next?
Well, so it's not the year I expected. I think that's universal. So at the moment I'm doing still doing daily socially distanced concerts out my window. Today was the 173rd concert. I do them at 5 p.m. every day. I'd sort of thought I would get to maybe 100 and then stop, but as fate would have it, it's gone on quite a while. But when I return to LA, I'm actually doing a Bowie meets Rachmaninoff album with David Bowie's pianist Mike Garson, who played the piano on Aladdin Sane and did all of his US concerts. And they are from live improvisations that he did on stage touring Ziggy Stardust and various albums. And then it's sort of that mixed with Prokofiev on acid and Life on Mars, it sounds like Rachmaninoff. And that's kind of the vibe of that album. So that's happening. And then I'm also doing an album release of the lockdown concerts and of the popular things that have been played with Sony. And then in terms of my next project, which is just me, it needs some thought and time, but I need those two to kind of go out first before I have kind of mental space for the next. But I am actually writing a piece for Bala on invisible women in Blakey mythology, which I'm really excited about. You can actually probably see the mind maps in the back on the wall, which are looking too faded because I haven't spent enough time with them recently.
Yeah, that's right. Harriet is going to contribute to the next issue of Vela, and I'm very excited about it. So thank you for agreeing to do this as well.
You're welcome. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for having me.
Very shy, aren't they, Harriet, the members of the Blake Society?
Did you see the Blake exhibition at the Tate?
I did. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I actually got to see it before it opened. So I spent about 7 hours wandering around. It was incredible. But I could have gone back again and again and again, but it was actually the day before I was going to fly back to New York. But it was amazing. It was so beautifully done.
Okay, I'll ask another question. You said you came to Blake through the texts, and I was just wondering, is there also an image that speaks to you, or is it the sound of Blake? Do you read him out aloud to feel yourself into, or do you look at a painting? Do you have a favorite painting? Do you have a favorite?
I think his philosophy is really what speaks to me, because I like the fact that it's anti-organized religion, but it has a relationship with a higher being, and such an emphasis on freedom through purity, and that whole, whenever I feel like I'm losing direction with my authenticity, I find that it really helps to bring me back into that place. And it's not really a specific poem, it's wherever I go within it. Philosophy in general really sits well with me, which makes me sound like I just read one thing, but it's the thing I can rely on the most to set me in that space, and a really positive, creative space.
So also Blake the person.
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
Harriet, one of Blake's famous aphorisms is, "Execution is the chariot of genius." And you spent your life developing this extraordinary skill on the piano. Do you think that in itself gives you some unusual and wondrous insights into the world you occupy?
Yes and no, because it's something that has to be nurtured constantly. Like it's not not a tap that turns on and then is pouring constantly. It's one that has to be respected, nurtured with the right amount of humility, the right amount of dedication, the right amount of outside inspiration, and always honest. And I was actually watching a little while ago an interview with Whitney Houston, and she was talking about how she felt that she didn't look after her channel well enough through her life and what she went through, and that's what it takes, and it constantly has to be put before everything else, and that means such a multitude of things. It's not just showing up, it's keeping every other part of you alive, so that you constantly have the ability to give. So in a slightly less roundabout answer to your question, I do think that it does, but only if I dedicate myself to it completely, which also means having other interests and a broad life, but never putting any of them above my ability to be the best channel of work that I can be.
You mentioned the Doors of Perception going through Aldous Huxley and then through the band The Doors. I would find it's quite sort of quite trendy these days to hate the Doors, but I have a bit of a soft spot for them. I wondered if you're a fan, particularly a piano-led band, I suppose.
Oh, I definitely love them. I'm obviously not very trendy.
Did that come through Blake, or was that originally unconnected and just a coincidence?
Totally unconnected and just happened.
Yeah.
But when I understood, I thought it was the most amazing thing ever.
Hi, Harriet. My name's Bill Honer. I'm a professor of psychiatry in Vancouver, actually. So this is a lunchtime endeavor for me, which has been very pleasant, and I really appreciate you doing this. So at risk, and I put that out as a disclosure in terms of my question, which you may choose to answer or not, but you mentioned you're coming to Blake through school and through classes and things like that. What about in your family? I mean, myself, I told this to Tim and others at the one meeting I was able to attend in London. My great-grandmother was the one who introduced me to Blake, or so on. But yourself, was there any influence of your growing up in your family and so on this very creative integration as a polymath almost between your work with Blake and your professional work as a musician and so on? Any thoughts about that, or things you might want to share?
I think that I was encouraged to read a lot as a child, and my father particularly really encouraged that, and I read from a very young age prolifically and loved it, and I think that's what made me open to listening, but I didn't have a Blake specific relationship as a child.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Friends, questions are often slow to bubble up. Is there any final question someone would like to ask?
When do we see you again?
I would love to come back.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to see you back. At least I would. I can't speak for the rest of them.
Thank you.
Then on behalf of the Blake Society, can we thank you, Harriet, for performing and talking to us this evening. And we look forward to following your expanding career.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure speaking with all of you and playing for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet.
Thank you.
Generous with your time.
Thank you very much.
Then good night, everyone, and we'll see you in December when we have an academic talking about one of the most famous images of Blake, Newton. So we look forward to seeing you again in December.
Thank you, Tim.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Harriet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.